If you've been asked to send an email, you've taken the email down, it's time to make the email to appointment offer and switch. Hi guys, my name's Deepak Shukla, founder at Pearl Lemon Sales. We're a sales training and development agency based in the UK as well as the USA and serving clients worldwide. And here today in 119 days of cold calling training, in day number 20, we're here to talk about the email to appointment offer and switch. But before we get into it, feel free to click the link below to get an additional 17 strategies not shared in this training. So fundamentally, we've been talking at length in the previous videos. Do go and watch them if you haven't yet, the last 4 or 5, about what happens when it comes to somebody asking to send an email. And this typically comes when you've not yet secured the appointment or potentially you're getting shut down. So once you've taken an email down, it's a great time to ultimately introduce the reality that, you know what, you could send someone an email, but an email is never as good as a conversation, which a lot of people will accept, especially if it's people in new business or if there's a variety of use cases. But when it's an introductory, ultimately email or an introductory conversation, shall we say, irrespective of medium, the way to get the most qualitative alongside the quantitative information is through speaking. And with that in mind, this is a moment in which you can say, why don't we actually set some time up to speak? Because, and this is where you can fall back into one of the accepted stereotypes of email, it's easier to write an email that doesn't explain the offering as effectively as a phone call would. And or when I send you an email, it might raise questions in your mind that a conversation would resolve. So offering ultimately to send an email, but also then book in some time to speak, or instead of sending an email, to set up some time to speak so the email will then be used for, rather than pre-call qualification, but really for a calendar invite, are some scenarios you could potentially take the prospect down. And the rationale behind taking the prospect down those routes is, number one, you know what, Frank, definitely, I can send an email across, but I don't know if you're anything like me. Sometimes emails, the message sometimes gets kind of lost in translation. What I think is clear is not always my message being received. And see what I've done there, guys, because we're kind of adding some layers of complexity here. But we're talking about the fact that, or the stereotype that a lot of people buy into, that things can get lost in translation on email. But we're also adding self-deprecation into it, because we are saying that, well, you know what, Frank, you know what, Deepak, I don't, annoyingly, I don't always write the best emails, and I'm worried that I'll send you something across and it's just not gonna really demonstrate the value that we could offer. So I'm thinking that I've got your email here now. What are you doing, say, tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock? Have you got a 15-minute slot sometime around then? So there's a lot of things that are happening within what's just happened there that we will unpack. Beginning with, and let's go through this sequentially. You know what, Deepak? That introduces a step change. Okay, so that expression is a bit of a step change. We've got the email, but now we're switching the narrative into a different space. Okay, so typically what happens, per our conversation before, that someone says, just send me an email, and you introduce a but what about, the ifs, the whens, without taking the email down. That sets a huge obstacle up in the mind of the prospect that will prevent you from really getting over it unless you bloody leapfrog or pole vault over it, as opposed to simply being able to step around it once you've got the email in hand. Now you're ready to change lanes and to suggest, if you're anything, if you're anything like me, I don't send the best. I wish I sent better emails, or sometimes I send an email across and it doesn't quite explain the product as effectively as I'd want it to, or the product's quite complex. And do you see here that we're underlining the fact that it's difficult. And this is again, what we're doing here is we're layering and layering common stereotypes, one after the other, after the other, after the other, because one of those stereotypes will be a stereotype that the prospect buys into. And that's the part that's key here, that you're saying, number one, emails get lost in translation. Number 2, if you're anything like me, a common trope. Number 3 was, you know what suggests a meaningful change. So you know what, sometimes emails get lost in translation, because if you're anything like me, I try and write something, but I don't effectively convey the message that I'm trying to deliver. I don't effectively write what I mean. I don't effectively write what I mean, the lost in translation. And if you're anything like me, so you wrap it up into this really powerful reasons and rationale for why it's better to just have a phone call. And also, emotionally, you're introducing agreeableness, you're introducing empathy, you're introducing convivialness and agreeableness, and these elements are really powerful to use as a strategy to sneak your way back into their calendar, especially when you include since I've already got your calendar here, sorry, I've already got your email here, so I'm just wondering, well, what I could maybe do is, when you've got a little bit more time, just really get into a little bit more into the bones of it, and just we could quickly thrash out how this might work for your company, or I could demonstrate the value to you, and we'd leave that meeting walking away with you recognizing whether this is going to be a good fit for your business or not. Now, there's some variations, Ed, that I was just spitballing and stumbling, but the reason that this is powerful is because it doesn't seem so far-fetched now to ultimately switch it from an email with a view, taking an email with a view to sending an email with some more information, with some other determined activities, or just taking the email as well as then saying, why don't we go straight to appointment? Now, you can combine, right? You can combine this with the email contents approach, okay? So please do watch training number 19 if you've not yet watched training number 19 for the email contents approach, but the variations change slightly when you've already got the information that they request from the contents of the email. So in the LL insurance, limited liability insurance, then it might be the case, you know what, Deepak, given what you've just told me, I need to get 15 minutes in your diary tomorrow because this is something that we can definitely help you with. Are you worried about? So do you see how you can use the email contents approach in combination with the email to appointment offer and switch depending upon what has happened during that call, but both routes, whether they've not given you much information or you know that they're qualified, but you've got the email now, you've got some information now, because you can potentially take the email down, write the email, you can accept the email, write the email down, be clear about how you repeat the email back to them. You can skip, depending upon what's happened, the email contents approach, and then you can make the email to appointment offer and switch, because you've got a scenario 1 where you haven't learned much about the email contents, or for whatever reason, it's not got the result you're looking for, but you can still go for the appointment in a really rational manner, because it is true that emails get lost in translation. It is true that if it isn't relevant, they're not going to open it up. It is true that it might be quicker to determine their need over a 15-minute chat. And it is a way to fundamentally discover how qualified the prospect is. So using that rationale can help you book in more appointments. Thanks, guys.
Remember, we've got 17 gated strategies just waiting for you. All you need to do is bing, subscribe, as well as click the link in the description below to get access to those 17. Get some.